What can be done to raise the sights of children of color in Dallas so that they have an imagination of opportunity? Byron Sanders of Big Thought is going to talk about just that and the work that they do with their nonprofit. On Good God, stay tuned. Welcome to Good God, conversations that matter about faith and public life. I'm George Mason, your host, and I'm pleased to welcome to the program today Byron Sanders. Byron, we're glad to have you with us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Now, Byron is the president and CEO of a creative educational enterprise called Big Thought.
That's right.
Big Thought, and it is a big social transformation organization that we're going to get to talking about after a while a little more. But Byron, I think because this is Good God, we like to talk about people's faith journey that got them into this work and how it informs your work and how you connect the dots between your own personal spiritual life and the work you do. So tell us something about your self-identification in terms of your faith.
Absolutely. So I grew up here in Dallas. Right. And I grew up a church kid too. Yep. Most of my life was in Southern Dallas. DeSoto, Oak Cliff, a little bit of Pleasant Grove, but it was kind of the Southern Dallas life, right? And my mother is an educator. She was a teacher for the longest time. She just retired after 36 years not too long ago, and she's doing what all retired teachers do, which is teach.
Exactly.
But still living her best life, right?
That's good.
So education kind of just was in the atmosphere, right? It was in the drinking water growing up.
Right.
But what was interesting was I started off in Dallas Independent School District, loved my school, Dale Turner, gave me really solid grounding in who I was, my culture, my identity. I learned to love, my blackness. I learned to love history, about a culture that I really identify with. And then from there, went to the Talented and Gifted Magnet, still in Dallas Independent School District, over in Spence. So went from Oak Cliff to East Dallas. Got a different experience there. Oak Cliff, all black. Excuse me, it was an all black school. And then East Dallas, it was a mostly Hispanic school. And then I was in the tag segment, which was, a little bit more diverse, but different environment. Met a mentor in my little nerd outlet, which was History Day. And History Day, Donald Payton told me about this school called Green Hill. So I went out and visited, loved it, took a tour. There were peacocks walking around. I'm like, I want to go to the school with peacocks, right?
Right.
And so went up there, and I thought I was hot stuff, and I was going to come in and be hot stuff because I'm hot stuff. That's what I do in school. This is what I do, right? Well, I got baptized in a different set of expectations.
Right.
And it wasn't that they're using different books or algebra is algebra, right? But I was not used to the inquiry that students were expected to have.
Right.
I thought when kids were talking back to the teacher, I thought they were being disrespectful as opposed to having an actual conversation. Right. It was a completely different
culture.
Frame of reference.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I got the hang of it after 2 years. Got the hang of it. But I would never forget, though, that I would being patently aware that I was getting something really special at this school. But I happened to be in the right place at the right time, met the right mentor who told me about a school that I'd never heard of, happened to have a mother and father who were willing to sacrifice. We woke up at 5 o'clock every morning so that I could catch the bus in West Dallas at 6:30 at the Boys Club. Then we'd go pick up some more kids at East Dallas, then we'd head up to Addison. I happened and was able to do so with mostly a full ride.
Yeah.
And wow, that was a lot of dominoes that had to fall in order for me to have that experience, the kind of experience that allowed me to be on the dean's list my first year when I got to Southern Methodist University. And college wasn't a shock for me.
Right.
And I was patently aware that every day when I drove back home and we crossed at Trinity, and I'm passing the neighborhoods that I grew up in, or the neighborhoods where you would take the exit to get to church, and you couldn't forget what was going on with the lives of the folks that were my classmates, or the people that I was, that I would play football with or run track with.
And so the goal shouldn't be that you have to get out in order to move up. That you should be able to move up by staying right where you are.
Opportunity should abound everywhere.
Exactly.
And I knew I had to do something in education. I had no idea what I was going to do.
Right.
Fast forward. Graduate, University of Tulsa, come back, I'm working in pharmaceutical sales.
Yeah.
And there was a gaping hole in the fulfillment part of my composition.
Here comes the spiritual.
And went on a really deep search for what that thing was.
Yeah.
And I came to a mission statement.
Yeah.
Mission of Byron Sanders is to love my God with all my heart and soul, to be the husband, father, son, and brother, according to what pleases him, and to work diligently and daily in my most sincere efforts to pursue my appointed purpose with honor, character, bravery, and love.
Now, wait a minute. That's a mission paragraph. That's not a mission statement. That's good.
Listen, it's a powerful tool.
Yes.
That helped me know what to say yes to. Also helped me know what to say no to.
Right.
It crystallized my pathway.
Right.
And became my North Star.
Yeah.
And it's something that I say every day.
Okay.
I have it stitched into some of my clothes. I mean, like, it is.
Yeah.
It truly is that thing, that anchor that I use to keep my purpose for being on this planet paramount and forefront. Good. And so that's what led me on the purpose-driven path toward working explicitly in the spaces for education. And it started a journey. I'm a few steps in, but that journey started once I crystallized with the mission statement.
All right, so there's your mission statement.
Yeah.
And it starts with very biblical language.
Absolutely.
All right, so where'd you get that?
Well, when I first started, it was to be, because I had to start somewhere. I had no idea what this statement was going to be, but it was to be the best pharmaceutical sales rep the world has ever had.
It's a long way from love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. Yeah.
But you know what? I mean, I just had to write something down just to get the ball going. But what happened was I went through the why exercise.
Ah, very good.
I kept asking myself, well, okay, if that is it, then why? Right. And I just asked so many whys, studied, prayed, fasted, and it took about 3 months to get there in 2007. Okay. And every single word is intentional. Sure. And the priorities, even in the statement, are laid out. When I said to love my God with all my heart and soul, it's an action word that really is kind of the core constitution of who I am, from which everything else flows. Right. And what it became more for me was not just, hey, this is what I'm going to do. It became an identity. Yes. And so no matter where I go, I carry that with me. No matter what job I'm doing, that mission statement hasn't changed.
So this is an important thing to say, I think, for all of us who, I think a lot of people do jobs and they don't get the difference between a job and a vocation.
That's right.
Right? So I like to say that a job is an occupation. Yeah. A vocation is a preoccupation.
Ah, that's good.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I get it.
That a job is something you can do. A vocation is something you can't not do.
That's it.
And so when you have a mission statement like yours, then what's happening is it really, the particulars of how you carry that out are less important than whether those are being driven by the main thing.
Amen to that. Yeah. When I realized that I didn't have a bullseye that I had to hit somewhere down the line in the future, when I realized that it was much more about who I'm trying to be in this moment, in this time, for my God, and being present to the purpose that He's given for me at this moment in time. There's certainly been a trend, but Man, every 5-year plan that I'd written before ends up getting balled up and tossed out the window.
Sure.
Because I don't have enough imagination to dream up exactly what God has for me.
But the mission doesn't have to change.
That's the beauty.
Exactly.
That's
So
the beauty of it.
then you know, so all right. So let's move from pharmaceutical to big thought.
Yeah. So
all right. How did you get
how in
from
the
one
world
to the
did that
next?
happen? Yeah.
Yep.
Well, when I was in pharmaceutical, I was like, I'm going to make a ton of money, and then I'll do something later on when I'm like 60 or so.
Hey, your 60 is not so bad.
60 is a great age. It's a great age.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
wear it well.
Okay, thanks.
But honestly, everybody has a different purpose and different reason for being here, right? And God puts a different little seed inside of you.
Right.
For me, it was that I needed to be, like you said, for my job, the thing that I was doing the majority of the day,
Right.
that needed to be where I was living my purpose.
Me too.
So I resigned.
Yep,
Yeah, I
exactly.
can tell, right?
Yep.
And it comes through.
Right.
So I resigned and went to Group Excellence. It was actually a mentor and tutoring company that we started when we were undergrads at SMU.
Wow.
And I came over 2000. At the end of 2008 was when I was making that transition. Started top of 2009. There's a bunch of mid to late 20-year-olds. And so we were a social enterprise before we had the terminology, which really would have helped with the capital raise.
Yes.
But our whole premise was using college students as both mentors and tutors.
Good.
In schools that needed the help and with lives that needed the support.
Right.
And we grew. And we went in 2011. We were an Inc. 500 company, so we were the 5th fastest growing education company in the country. And I think we did about 15 million top line revenue because we were working in all the urban centers, major urban centers in Texas, except for El Paso.
Okay.
And it was a joy because you had all these purpose-driven young people out there working alongside equally brilliant but unaware students in marginalized communities.
Right.
And magic was happening all over the state. I think we worked with about a couple 100,000 students that year.
Right.
And several schools got off the bad list, with state accountability because of the gains they were able to make. That was Group Excellence. And that started the journey.
Okay.
First step.
Well, and let's just stop there for a moment and just reflect on what you just said, and that is when you put these mentors side by side with people in underprivileged educational settings, the magic starts to happen.
Yeah.
And this is something I think people who grow up in privileged communities don't understand, in the sense that that's already happening for them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the air they breathe, the water they drink. It's the normal course of life. They have people who look like them.
Yeah.
They have people who are successful in their homes and in their communities, and they aspire to be like that person.
Yeah.
But that is not always true in underprivileged, pretty much generally speaking, in underprivileged areas. And so when you do that, you up the human capital imagination, don't you?
Listen, you hit on something amazing right there, because we stretch for the capacity that we believe is reasonable and rational to attain, even if it's somewhat bold and audacious, right? The analogy I always use, if you tell me to go and make the Olympic 4x1 relay team, right? I'm actually not going to work very hard for that. It's a little outside of my range.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, all right, yeah, sure, right? But if you tell me there's a $500 purse for the flag football rec league for 30 to 45-year-olds locally in the community, I'll actually, you know what? I'll go to practice. I'll get in shape. I'll stretch. Right. I will go and play for that, because that's attainable.
Yep.
For a lot of our kids in these communities where they haven't had a role model, their parents, themselves didn't have a positive experience with the education system, so they don't have the degree or whatever. They haven't seen things, right?
Yes.
Their world is as small as their block sometimes. Well, telling that guy or that kid, hey, you can go and, be a doctor.
Right.
You could be a lawyer.
Be anything you want to be.
You could be anything
you want to be.
Listen, this is a land of opportunity. Go get it.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And that can be crippling, because then,
that's right.
When they find out that that's not really possible for them,
right.
now it's their fault. It's the self-loathing that happens, the loss of self-esteem. Let's pick it up there when we come back from our break, because there's so much more that this is going to pursue.
Yeah.
Big thought.
Big
All
thought.
Right, here we go.
Fast forward a few steps.
All right, hold that one here. We're gonna promote Big Thought, and we'll come back and talk.
Cool.
Okay.
Big Thought is a non-profit organization that works with partners across the city to provide creative learning programs that enrich the lives of young people, with a mission to close the opportunity gap for youth by making imagination a part of everyday learning through educational programs and system-wide community partnerships. Big Thought provides access to high-quality learning experiences that power creativity and foster social and emotional well-being.
We're back with Byron Sanders, and Byron, we were just talking about Big Thought and about, more generally, the capacity for people in underserved communities really to imagine a future that is both filled with promise but realistic at the same time. And how to pull that off, and this idea of mentors coming alongside is a crucial part of it.
Absolutely, without a doubt. What a mentor does is it gives a young person permission to succeed. Right. It gives them permission to dream. It gives them access to a arsenal of dreams that they might not have had access to before, just by simple exposure. Right. Just because you don't know what you don't know. You can't dream of what you've never seen or have any type of conception.
Well, and this is actually one of the things that most people don't realize was the negative impact of the school's desegregation, in that before desegregation of schools, every black kid and person of color in their schools had teachers who looked like them, principals who looked like them, people who they could look in the eye, could look at them, and they could believe in, they could aspire to, they could see these role models. You desegregate the schools, and all of a sudden what you're doing is you're busing kids into white schools. Black principals and teachers don't get jobs, and they're finding other places to be. Instead of integrating everybody,
that's right,
where now there's somebody to look up to for everybody, now you put black kids into white schools, and who do they have to look up to?
That's right. But
then those of us in the white privileged community say, well, look, they're not achieving because their family structure is bad. That sort of thing. But they don't understand that there's a whole systemic issue involved in all of this that we're now able to get some distance and reflect upon.
That's right.
And in doing so, we're starting to make progress in shifting all of that. But every hand on deck here. Nonprofits like yours have to play a role in this too.
Absolutely, without a doubt. What you're hitting on is the whole notion of this concept of stereotype threat.
Yes.
And the risk of it grew when we did desegregation the way we did it.
That's right.
And I think what's important for folks to know is that desegregation as a goal was the right target.
Right.
The process that we use was the one that was ultimately showed to have long-term some positive effects in closing the opportunity gap, but the way it did it was traumatizing, and it removed those really powerful and important role models and people who had just cultural context and belief that these kids actually were capable.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, there is a kind of cultural intelligence that has to be in play in every context in order for people to thrive.
That's
and when you can have all sorts of other kinds of intelligence, but if you lack cultural competence, then there's going to be some irritation and some failure take place in systems. So that's what I think we found in schools, that because we never fully got there. And then once we did that, we had white flight, which left, so I'm proud of what I see happening in DISD. I think we have some tremendously innovative progress going on there, and achievement is coming back. But that hasn't actually changed yet, the demographic dynamics.
Right.
And part of what you're talking about here is strengthening and supporting those role models that I think are going to make a real difference.
Absolutely. You know, and mentoring is certainly a part of our work at Big Thought. You know, another really important part of our work is this notion of social and emotional learning, right? There's a very important body of research and evidence that is overwhelming, that highlights the effect that trauma has
Yes.
on the life of a human being. Right. And I don't want to limit this to children, because you see it there, but it has long-term effects.
Right.
This whole notion of adverse childhood experiences, right? There's research, there was a landmark study that was done in 97, 98. Center for Disease Control Prevention out in the western part of the country. And what they did is they actually did the study with a relatively affluent population, because they wanted to show that adverse childhood experiences are fairly universal.
Okay.
But the problem is, well, one, they saw that you could actually predict long-term health negative outcomes based on experiences that a child had that would fall in these categories of witnessed maternal abuse, experienced neglect, themselves experienced sexual abuse, right? Those types of categories. There were 10 different categories they were looking at. And what they saw was that you can actually predict not just if they're going to have any mental health issues, but if they were going to have diabetes.
Wow.
Or congestive heart failure.
Wow.
You're actually able to predict early death based on trauma that a person undergoes before the age of 18.
Wow.
That was powerful research. You can understand the implications in the healthcare, but you also understand the implications in the education sphere.
Right.
Well, bringing that forward, think about if they saw that, I would say, ubiquitous a presence of trauma, even amongst a relatively affluent population. Think about what you see in concentrated poverty.
Wow.
And typically those are communities of color. Those are Black and brown communities. And the difference is having trauma does not doom you to having the negative outcomes that come from it, but having trauma without buffers to address it, without a strong, positive, consistent role model, adult role model, without having mental health resources, or being in a place that could be able to provide supports, after school programs, things like that. In those instances, you're much more susceptible to long-term negative effects of what childhood trauma brings. And you're not able to flip that into turning kind of that resilience into a strength. And it can have a long-term, very significant deleterious effect on a young person. And that's one of the main things that we're dealing with in communities that have been under-resourced, that again are always or typically communities of color.
Well, and let's talk about what happens in under-resourced communities and their schools. What's the first thing that gets cut in those school programs?
That's right.
It's the support systems and it's the arts. All right, so when we talk about what produces healing, is the activation of those parts of the brain that music and the arts and dance and the like, they create opportunities for people to imagine the world differently. It opens up possibilities for them beyond being locked into where they are, and yet those are the programs that go first.
That's right.
Because we think, for all the good that STEM does, that science, technology, and engineering and math, because we want people to be able to get jobs and to work productively and all of that. Nonetheless, the holistic approach to being able to be a full human being and to be well and to be a leader, not just an automaton, not just a worker bee, but actually to be a leader, to think creatively. That's where the arts comes in,
That's
with
right.
the imagination and whatnot.
That's right. The arts, the creative process. Human beings create.
Yes.
Right? Living in those places of what could be, on the
Yes.
frontiers of what's possible.
Right.
If you have not built your creative muscles, that comes through the arts,
Right.
comes through project-based learning, comes
Yes.
through service learning,
Right.
things where you get to go and you have to create,
Right.
then we're doing us as a society, but also the individual, a tremendous disservice.
Right.
The thing that is really powerful about the advance in technology in our lives, in the workforce, is that it's really revealing the things that have always mattered most, but it's stripping away those other things that we used to think were the most important. Here's
Say
what
more about
I
that.
mean by that.
Yeah.
Automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning, the technology boom that we're in the middle of right now. The Federal Department of Labor saying that 65% of kids today in school are going to be working in jobs that don't yet exist.
Wow.
That's actually a pretty conservative estimate. Some estimates are as high as 85% by
Wow.
2030.
Wow.
New, completely just unimagined jobs,
Wow.
right? Well, okay, if that's our reality, how in the world are you going to prepare them for that?
Right.
As educators, as a system right now, how do you prepare a child for a world that's so dynamic we can't even imagine it?
Right. Right.
Well, what you have to do, and what futurists are saying, what macroeconomists are saying, what entrepreneurs are saying, is that they're actually going back to the basics. They're saying that we need to teach kids creative problem solving.
Wow.
The second thing that they say is most important. We need to teach kids. Martin Ford has a great book. It's called Rise of the Robots. The two elements that he says best prepare people for this new and dynamic world. One is how to be a creative thinker. And two, it's how to build complex human relationships.
Wow.
Because turns out, you talked about automatons. You know who's better at being an automaton than a human? An actual robot.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah. Right.
So all the things that are process oriented, predictable,
Right.
Repetitive, redundant, things like
Yeah.
that, those things are being done by the machines, and they're being done a lot better. So where is the human being's place
Right.
in society?
Right.
Anything that requires creativity and anything that requires a human interaction. We actually see this at a macro level as well. If you look at 1975, you look at the valuation of the S&P 500. You had about 84 to 85% of that valuation of all of those companies, hard assets, inventory, real estate, the widgets that they made, right? Fast forward to 2015, it's completely inverse.
Wow.
83, 84%
Wow.
of the valuation are things that are creative assets.
Wow.
IP, brand equity, the expectation of you being able to do
Yes.
well, right?
Right, right.
That's what's even moving our large macroeconomic systems.
Wow.
Creativity and human beings.
Well, and let's just say, if we were to think about this in terms of the current dynamics of the workforce in America, the people who have lived and worked in jobs that they feel are no longer profitable for them, or
Yeah.
they feel left out by this economy. They don't feel, we talk about retraining for new jobs and all of
Yes.
that, but when you take that entire workforce and they haven't learned from a young age to think creatively and solve problems, what are they left with? Well, they're left with fear.
That's right.
Fear of the future, and when you operate out of fear,
Yeah.
then you do things that you wouldn't do otherwise to
Yes.
protect yourself, and that doesn't produce a healthy society.
Amen to that.
So, yeah.
We are, it means that we're not fit for the future.
Right.
And this is why there's a tremendous sense of urgency that we should have in order to change our systems. Right. And while we're moving, the fairly inertia-ridden systems, when I'm talking about not just education system, I'm talking about our healthcare system, I'm talking about our, all these different kinds of systems, we have to have really important partners in the meantime.
Right.
Because the kids get one shot,
Right.
right? They can't wait for us to get our act together.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's why Big Thoughts work in organizations like it is so important, because we come alongside a partner to the K-12 system, and we provide a space that's outside of the accountability-based systems that we have to run in our public education
Of course,
systems, right?
This is alongside.
This is alongside, and we create space for those creative learning
Beautiful.
opportunities. And we can connect those to explicit career paths
Yeah.
that youth get to explore themselves.
Wow.
If we can build systems that actually encourage youth agency, where they're thinking, deciding, and moving of their own accord, then we're better preparing them for a 21st century workforce, because those are the kinds of the jobs that will require human beings, where there's agency, forethought, and imagining what's possible as opposed to waiting for things to roll downhill.
Beautiful. Well, Byron, thank you for your leadership with Big Thought and for helping us understand the big picture of what's going on in all of this. We're grateful for your work. Thanks for being on Good God.
What a pleasure.
Terrific.
Thank you.
All right.
Big Thought is a non-profit organization that works with partners across the city to provide creative learning programs that enrich the lives of young people, with a mission to close the opportunity gap for youth by making imagination a part of everyday learning. Through educational programs and system-wide community partnerships, Big Thought provides access to high-quality learning experiences that power creativity and foster social and emotional well-being.